Hello and welcome to another episode of the Matt Belair podcast. Today's guest is a writer, speaker, and wisdom keeper. She speaks about the perception of reality, consciousness, creativity, leadership, and art. Oprah Winfrey has included her on the Super Soul 100 list, a team of awakened leaders and visionaries with a mission to guide and inspire. Oprah has also named her a Super Soul 100 teacher, and she has been featured on Oprah.com, Huffington Post, Times of India, and many other major news outlets. Her purpose is to help people realize how powerful and unique they truly are. She also holds an MA in art history and art sciences, psychology, communication, and media at Lund University in Sweden. Welcome to the show, Gordana Biernat. Hello.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Matt. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you. And where are you? You're calling me from Sweden right now?
Yes, I'm in Sweden. This is where I live in the southern part of Sweden. It's cold and it's autumn and it's beautiful actually because I love autumn. I love the leaves leaving the trees, letting go of all they don't need. So I love this. It's beautiful here where I am at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's the same in Canada. You guys have the 4 seasons, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love the change of the seasons. I wouldn't like to live in a place where it's always hot or always cold. I really do love the changes because it reminds me of how life actually is.
Yeah, I totally agree. Fall is one of my favorite times of year too. We get just magnificent colors from the trees. It's just sometimes like, oh my goodness, like this is wild.
Yeah, it's really wild. I mean, that is nature talking to you directly of the beauty of letting go, the beauty of the change. It's awesome. I love it. I really do.
Yeah, me too. Well, I wanted to just give the audience a little bit about your background. I received an email from a person, which was nice. I've only received a couple of these, so it was super nice to get. But it was just about the podcast, and they kind of went on about your work, and I wasn't sure who you were, and I had the pleasure of looking you up on Twitter and seeing all your work and all your beautiful words and what you're putting out there. And I was like, oh yes, like I definitely need to reach out to this person and see if she'd be willing to come on. So I'm very grateful that you accepted. And I'm grateful for your work and what you're putting out there. It's a very high level of wisdom, of truth, it's really beautiful stuff. When you see something that's real and honest and at that level, you just recognize it instantly. There's no kind of questioning it, and that's a lot of your work and a lot of what you're putting out there. And so if you could just give the people listening to this a little bit of background on who you are and what kind of work you do, then I'll get into firing some awesome questions your way.
Absolutely. As I said, I live in Sweden, but I love tweeting about who we are and why we are here on Twitter. I post tweets every day, trying to help people remember who they truly are and trying to reconnect to their core and source. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now, but before I started tweeting and started to reach a bigger audience, by the way, I'm at My Power Talk on Twitter, so you can go out there and see for yourselves what I do actually. Before that, I used to hold workshops, I used to speak, or I do speak still. I mean, I'm speaking to you and I do that, but I love changing people's life with short messages. This has actually been an opening for me to reach people in a direct way. I mean, you can talk to people, hundreds of them, and that's cool. But when you do it the way you can do it on social media, when you put out a thought which you sit alone and think about, and if people start responding to that, it's a directness which you cannot reach when you talk to a big audience. I love talking to big audiences, so it's not a problem. But I feel that this is actually a very direct way to speak to people via Twitter. And I know that people say that, well, social media, it distances people from each other. And I feel exactly the opposite. It kind of draws people together because putting a hashtag, you create a community and you create your own tribe, which has your vibe. And it's a direct communication, and I love it. So for the last 2 years, I've been persistently posting messages to people that are open to the frequency that I have. And the frequency is to remember who we truly are. And that's what I want to talk about with you today, because that is what I'm currently very focused on doing, spreading my message. And that's why Oprah found me, and that's why I'm writing this book now, because I want to share my message with the world. Just understanding who you are changes everything in your reality, which is a profound thing to do. Understand who you truly are.
Yes, I totally
That's what I
agree.
do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And well, I think it's bold and challenging to write in a certain way with just 140 characters, right? For me, I will write on Instagram. I think it's kind of actually similar now that we're talking about it. I'll post a quote and I'll just kind of write my 2 cents about it. But I have a lot longer, to kind of weave in stories, so that, put in a lot of potency with short tweets is a lot of skill. I think there's a quote that just talks about, mastery is taking something complicated and just making it very, very simple. So the more we can kind of simplify these concepts, the more wisdom and mastery we have. So your book is coming out, and I got to look at some of what's in there, and I really enjoyed going through some of the topics that you touch on, and these are universal, timeless topics. So when you're talking about, knowing who we truly are, I think my question would be, what can we do to reconnect with that? Because I think that everybody is really different, and maybe what is preventing us from understanding that, maybe holding on to illusions, or what would you recommend as a process for somebody listening to say, hey, this is some way to kind of connect deeply with, who you are and what's going on and what's real and all that, whatever you feel is most important.
I think that I had this conception when I was much younger, that my main thing here in this reality was to reconnect to my higher self, to reconnect to who I truly am, to reconnect to my source. And while that is true, I use, in my opinion, the wrong way to do it. I wanted to become highly spiritual. And I think that that is not exactly what we're here to do, because what we are here to do, we are spirit incarnated in this reality, which means that we have a body for a specific reason, and we are in a physical reality for a specific reason. And that reason is to explore this physical reality with our spirit, because when we're in spirit, we cannot explore a physical reality. So our purpose here is to look at physical reality from our own specific desires and from our own specific unique perspective, and share that with others. So the physical reality is actually what we are supposed to explore in order to find our spirit and in order to find who we are, because we are our desires. We are everything our spirit desires to explore. And that's why I talk a lot in my book about desires and about beliefs and about understanding what we're doing here, not trying to escape this reality by becoming more spiritual, because we are spirit incarnated, as I said. What we're here to do is actually to explore this. And for me, Matt, for instance, you love to snowboard. And I would love to ask you, why do you want to explore that? Why do you love to snowboard?
Yeah, well, I loved all that. Why do I love to sew? For me, it's so many things. It's funny because there's a lot of snowboard videos out there, and you'll see them in the mountains in Alaska, and they'll talk about how it's a very spiritual process for them. It connects me so much with nature. It connects me so much with the moment. It's thrilling and exhilarating and challenging and beautiful, and I get to be around my friends, and yeah, it's just everything. And I think one of the things, training athletes, snowboarders, skateboarders, and different types of athletes and people, one of the things that I don't think that they realize that I do is it's a practice of being in the moment. You can't be anywhere else. When I'm going down the mountain, I'm fully present, and that way you're kind of experiencing everything. So I'm experiencing presence in the most beautiful way. So that's why.
And I love your answer, because it's all about having a desire to experience every moment in this physical reality. So there is a desire behind this. And why I asked you this question is because every time I ask someone a question of why do you love doing what you do, they actually say, I have a desire to experience this. And desires are what we are here to explore. And your desires are different from my desires. We are of the same essence. I mean, we come from the same source. So there's no need to actually explore the source. The source is always the same. It's the same for you and it's the same for me. But what is different is your specific desires and what you want to experience in this reality. That's the difference between us. That is what makes your frequency different from my frequency, because we're all energy. I usually say that all that is consciousness, is consciousness when it's still, when it's stillness. And physical reality is consciousness in motion. And the motion is all about, for instance, a desire is a emotion. A thought is emotion. Otherwise, it's stillness. And we're all stillness, exploring ourselves through the motion or the emotion of being me, being who I am. So of course, it's interesting for everyone to understand what are my desires here. But the way our society is constructed, it's not constructed in order to help you find your desires. Actually, it's not about finding your desires, it's about fitting society. So at an early age, we learn how not to pursue our desires. We learn how to fit in instead. So instead of seeking joy actively, we dodge fear actively instead. That becomes our mode of operation, dodging fear. So my thing with the book and the tweets and the talks and everything I do actually is all about connecting to who you truly are by exploring your desires here and doing it consistently all the time in all the small details and small things you do in your life. It doesn't have to be anything big. I mean, you don't have to sit down and figure out who you are. All you have to do is figure out, what do I love to do? And then do it in small chunks in your reality. That's what I do. That's what I love about this reality, because it's all about exploring the desire of being me. And for you, maybe explore the desire of being you. One of your facets or one of your desires is the snowboarding. I know you do a lot of other things too, but when you look at it, why am I doing these things? And the things that feel good in your gut, that's who you are. It's very easy, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. I 100% agree with all of that. And I love the point about dodging fear. And, there's something that I've been kind of telling people when I'm coaching or talking, and it's come up on the podcast, where I think that people make choices in their life based around the least amount of risk. Oh my goodness, this is fear, and not the most amount of love. What lights them up the most. Now, with that being said, I have a lot of amazing friends that I grew up with in my hometown. I'm really grateful for all of them and everything they've done. And I've kind of watched how a lot of them have transitioned into having families and buying houses and doing all this stuff. And it's really beautiful and magical. And I'm like, wow, you guys are doing it. So for me to make a choice, and I make a lot of choices that people would shake their heads at, and, because it is risky sometimes to pursue, I think that if there's the risk and love, I'm just fully over on love and not minding any kind of business with risk. But I'm only looking after myself. You know what I mean? So I guess my question is, you know, when people that I see, like my friends that are beautiful and balanced, and they have a job or some way to provide for their family to live in this 3D reality, what would you recommend for them to maybe bring in more of what they love to do, or and then also maybe even be able to fully transition and support themselves in things that truly call to them? Because it's really easy for me to say, you know, this is my calling and I'm going to work really hard and I can spend all this time doing this podcast and trying to write my book. But if I had a kid and a wife and all that, that would be challenging. It might take longer, and I would know that I still want to do it and it's who I am, but I might have to do it in a different capacity. So, you know, I don't know if I phrased that in one simple question, or maybe you could just respond to that rant.
No, yeah, of course I can respond to it, because one of my aha moments in life was when I held my son for the first time in my arms. I looked at him and I felt that there is no turning back now. If I am not authentic, if I am not being my true self, then he cannot be that, because I am one of his mirrors in this life. So he actually made me more daring, because I made the conscious decision to be more authentic. And you have to find a way to be more authentic. You have to find your way of being that. And sometimes it involves just changing your job and taking the risk with doing that. It's not a non-risky business. It is a risky business to get to know yourself, because, as I said, our society is trying to help you. Actually, it kind of makes you scared trying to do that, because there's so many obstacles on the way. But you have to tell yourself that you need to be authentic in every decision you make, even the small decisions, and start with the small decisions. I mean, just sitting in a garden and looking at the flowers and the trees and everything, be authentic while you do it. You start practicing being authentic, and then you cannot turn back. You fulfill it. I know it's hard, because I do have a child and I do know what you're talking about. But if you don't do it, if you don't try to be more authentic in your everyday life, then what's the point of being here? Then you're living someone else's life. I mean, if you're not conscious of who you are and you're doing things just to survive, then every action is actually unconscious, because you don't know who you are. So you need to pursue this in every single moment of your life. And it doesn't mean that it's hard. It's just a way of switching from dodging fear into seeking joy in small, small chunks. I don't know if I answered your question, because it's a very hard question to answer, and there's no simple answer to it. And it's very individual. I mean, when I coach people, I usually have to look at their specific patterns in life and then see where we can change something. And it's always the small changes. We have to start with the small ones by actually becoming more aware of what you're doing, and ask yourself questions. Why am I doing this? And then listen to the answer. And if it feels good in your stomach, then that's fine. Keep doing that. If it doesn't, you have to try a way to I don't know, change something. Because every time you feel some kind of pain, emotional pain or fear, a negative feeling going through your body, that is your soul telling you change. That is your soul speaking directly to you. So the pain in your body, emotional or physical, is actually a positive reaction to a not positive environment, if you understand what I'm saying. I don't know if it makes any sense to you. But it is a positive reaction to a not positive environment. And you have to listen to that, and you have to try and find where you feel the joy. And it's I mean, I can talk about where I feel the joy, and that would be true for me, but that wouldn't be true for you. You have to navigate with that gut feeling all the time. This is good, this is not good. And then not judge it, just use it as some kind of a direction, as a GPS.
Yes. Yes. I love all that. I was just writing down a little bit of what you said, because there's a lot of points in there. And yes, you definitely answered the question. I love how that having a child just made you realize how important it was to be more authentic, to be the example, because I think, falling in line and doing what's easy is a little bit easier than, well, a lot easier than really pursuing those things that light you up, that are your calling or purpose or joy or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And when you spoke about the pain or the resistance, and that's our kind of internal compass, northeast, southwest, and the more joy and passion and enthusiasm you have, that's more alignment with source and who you are, right? So if I get lit up for snowboarding, maybe you get lit up baking, maybe you get lit up rock climbing, maybe it's woodworking, I don't know, whatever it is. And that's your joy, and that's between you and yourself and creator and all that. And I think that when we have these resistance, so if you go to your job or whatever it is, there's one side of me that's like, okay, we go Zen mindset, where this is the job and it's perfect, and I can create this state of peace and ease and connection and presence, and in Zen or Zazen, they'll give the same reverence to sweeping the floor, right, and washing the dishes as they do to meditation, right? And it's the same thing. You just need to be present. And so we could bring in that mindset. And it's also important to realize that if that's not the thing lighting you up and you're really not excited, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I kind of imagine it. And if you're watching this on YouTube or see the video, you can see like my hand is making a string, and you've got this direct line to source. And all of that is who you are, what lights you up, what makes you feel good, joy, passion, love, abundance. And as you kind of start to compromise who you are for security and out of fear, I would do this, but then you kind of go one step out, but, and then all of a sudden you're way over here and you create this tension and this pain and this, this internal feeling of, life sucks. I hate everything. And that's your own knowing of like, yeah, dude, you got to fix this, you got to change something. And if you don't, it'll let you go all the way until you break that cord and explode everything. And then just start you at the beginning and say, hey, look, just start fresh. You tried that. It didn't work out. Now rebuild. And a lot of people from there is like, when I lost everything, that's when I kind of reconnected. So.
But it is exactly the same thing with near-death experiences, for instance. I had I wouldn't call it near-death experience, but I had a car accident when I was 18. My father was driving and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden we were turning upside down. The car was turning upside down and I was in it. And in the midst of all this, everything just stopped. Time showed itself to me to be a very elastic thing. I mean, it wasn't at all solid the way we look at time. I mean, when you look at your watch, when 5 minutes have gone. This was like blown away in my reality, and the glasses were flying around, and I was looking at the glasses, and I had the time to think about the rainbow colors in the glass, because the light hit the glass and I saw the rainbow colors, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And I had the time to feel the fear of dying and saying, this is not real. Fear is not real. It's just an illusion. I'm not afraid. And I was 18 years old. I mean, I haven't even started my life, and I wasn't afraid of dying. I remember thinking that it's fine, it's okay, I just don't want to feel pain. And then I felt that there is no pain, because that too is an illusion. And then the car stopped and we survived and everything was fine. But I am so grateful for that moment, even though it was a horrible moment when you look at it from the outside. But from the inside, what happened to me was that I got to know my true self. And that sets you on a path which you cannot go back from. You know who you are, you understand that there is love, and love is all that is. Everything else is an illusion in time and space. So sometimes you need a near-death experience in order to wake up to what you really are. I mean, a lot of people might need that, even though it's maybe cruel to say so, because most of us are afraid to lose our lives. But just to come that close to understand who you are. I think you've had one too, because I read about it somewhere that you had a near-death experience. So what did you feel? What happened to you when you did that? For me, it was a profound moment. I mean, seeing yourself the way you truly are, which set me on a path and doing what I love to do. Maybe not baking, but I do love to write. That's my thing. So, and you cannot turn your back to that. I cannot accept reality if I feel it's forced on me. I need to feel it fully the way I do now, just because of that one single experience, which probably lasted for 2-3 seconds, and still it was so profound for me. So tell me, what did you feel? I'm very curious about these things. I ask people this all the time.
Yeah. So for me, it was a little bit different. I just wanted to add on that real quick before I answer, because I wanted to make sure I remember. You know, so we have these experiences, right? And one of the examples that I share is Burning Man, a transformational experience. And so a lot of people talk about how amazing it is, right? But a lot of people have very terrible experiences, and it humbles you. Like, to, you know, one of my friends, and I'm going to have podcasts with him, he was left, and he's a great person. He was left with just his underwear in the freezing cold in the middle of the desert. And he got to this space of like, oh my God, it's cold, like it's really cold at night, right? So you're in the middle of the desert all of a sudden in pitch black with nothing around you. And you know, it's a very long story, but the outcome is like, I was so grateful to have shoes on my feet, like a level of gratitude that, you know, so it, you know, and you can see it in his eyes, and it's changed him. You know, he's like, that experience, you know, at the time I was like, F Burning Man, F this, you know, F all my friends. And then as I sat and reflected, I was like, whoa, you know, holy smokes, what a lucky and fortunate and powerful experience I just had. And so I feel like the near death is the exact same. It can have that power. And how I kind of see people is that, I think it's called Dante's Peak, that old movie where they talk about the frog. If you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. Yes. But if it's in lukewarm water, he kind of relaxes until you boil him to death. So, you know, from your perspective in helping people, you know, because these experiences, they change you. They're transformational, near death. Can we bring in elements that might, or mindset, because you hear something, you know, and it's one thing, but then you're in it and experience it, and it's totally different. I'm just curious if you would, you know, have any thoughts on maybe bringing in some sort of necessity, right? And that's with my training with athletes. You know, if I train a traditional sport, usually it's a level up like baseball or hockey or something like that, because in extreme sports, we have a necessity to land on our feet. We don't get 2-3 tries. You know, a tennis server can miss a whole bunch. But if you want to do your first double backflip or triple backflip or whatever it is, you have more of a necessity to land on your feet or come close. So this is kind of how I see with this near-death experience and this real transformation of, you know, now he has this whole level of gratitude that, you know, I wish I could just instill in myself and in other people, and it's like, oh, wow, I'm grateful for food. I'm grateful for this. So did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, because it's all about creating the contrast. The contrast always wakes you up from the slumber of having it all, or being in this lukewarm water. It wakes you up when you see the contrast. For instance, I have this funny thing going on. Every time I have an argument with my husband, when I feel that, oh, he doesn't understand me, oh, I don't want to talk to him, and then I go like that, and I think, what if I were to go outside and a car hit me and I die? Is this what I want? How would it feel never to see him again? How would it feel never to be close to him again? How would it feel never to talk to him again? And it puts everything in perspective. And I forget all about the small things, the lukewarm things, and it just brings out the passion back in me. So just to imagine the contrast, to imagine not having it all, having the ability to visualize not having it, having the ability to visualize being in the desert without anything but shoes and underwear, that would put it in a contrast. When you're in it, you have the feeling of it, and it's easier to see the contrast. But you can always train yourself in seeing the contrast without being in it, and that makes a difference. It does, it truly does, especially when it comes to people. Just imagining that you will never see them again puts things in perspective, because that is what happens when people die. You have not the ability to see them over and over again every day as you do, which we take for granted. So not taking them is one way to do it. Of course, it's easier when you're in it, have a near-death experience. It's easier when something is happening to you, but we can't always have that. So the next best thing is to actually try and imagine the contrast to it. Imagine not having it. Imagine not being able to do what you're doing. Imagine having no legs, for instance. I had this feeling once. I saw a boy, I think he was 11 or 12. I think it was shown on Oprah, but I'm not sure because it's many, many years ago. And the program started, they showed this boy, and his biggest dream was to run the New York Marathon. And I was going, oh, that's cool, that's nice. The only thing was that this boy did not have feet. So they had to construct special things for him to run with. I don't know what it's called in English, but constructing some kind of legs for him to run. And the next picture of him was him running. He had this biggest smile on his face and he was running. And I'm thinking, what am I complaining about? What are my small problems in life compared to this? Look at this boy. He's the happiest person on earth because he's doing something. I can do this anytime I want. And he had all these things that had to be made for him and arranged for him in order for him to have that experience. And he's the happiest boy on earth because he can do something he's been dreaming of doing. I mean, there's nothing we can't do. We just have to put it in the right perspective. So imagining that you can't do it, that's a good thing to do to create the contrast.
I love that. That's a really great answer. When you were speaking about it, one powerful experience that came to mind was a shamanic death ritual. And for me, all that is, for people here, shamanic, which freaks them out, a guided meditation where you experience your death. And so you go in and you got to walk in and accept it. You're done. You're toast right now. And so then I like to ask people, what if you only had a month to live? What would you do? What if you had 2 months? What if you had 6 months? And start living that way as if you didn't have this time guaranteed, because guess what? You do not. And so it's kind of this balance. And I'd like to answer your question because I skipped it over and I'd like to answer it because you asked. So for me, I've had a couple. One of the closest ones was Mount Everest, but I didn't know at the time. Well, I think I did. It's a bit delirious. I got caught in a record-breaking snowstorm, and what happened was, long story short, is when I was in Nepal and I was meditating with monks and trying to, figure out what enlightenment is in Buddhism and all that stuff. And, somebody just tell me the answer in, 2 sentences or less, give me enlightenment, which is, lots of Westerners' problems. So I realized Everest is there and I'm like, I'm going to go trek Everest, obviously, like if it's here. So I'm looking up and I like photography, and Gokuri, this other peak, is meant to be more beautiful. Same with Annapurna. It's supposed to be just more beautiful than Everest. Everest isn't the most beautiful to take photos. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? Then I realized I can do Gokuri and Everest in one righteous hike. So I'm just about, it's like 4 or 5 days up to Gokuri Peak. And it's been sunny every morning, and our guide's like, do you want to go up to this peak? And this is where the most righteous view is, right? This is where you get it. This is what you paid for. And we're like, no, we'll do it in the morning because we walked all day, because it's another hour and a half or so. When we wake up, you can't see your hand 2 feet in front of your face. And I'm so mad. And so we walk up to the spot anyway, you can't see anything. And on the way down, I had one of those transformational experiences on happiness, and really realizing how much of a perspective it was, and how much, our happiness will rely on an expectation and, this all this stuff. So, because I was in it, I was in the deepest anger and I just could not get out of it. And so I do one day down. Now it's 3 days back up to Everest. And so day one, it snows a bit. And then day two, it snows. I didn't know this at the time, but it was record breaking snowstorm. And so my guides basically tell me, if I don't get to the next checkpoint, I'm going to miss Everest too. And I'm just like, there's no way that's happening. It's just not happening. So I don't give a crap. And I start to walk out, and it's like knee and waist deep. And at first it's fun and it's funny. And I'm Canadian and I'm in the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And so, but after like an hour and a half, we hadn't gone anywhere, and we had to retreat down to this space. And well, it was probably more than that. It's probably like 3 hours of going through knee and waist deep snow. And if you've ever done that, you realize how much energy you exert. And I'm sweating just profusely. So then we start after an hour there, and all my stuff is soaked now. All my stuff is soaked, and I start to walk. And now the light changes. It starts to get colder. I'm drenched. Now everything is soaking wet. And my body starts to shut down, and I start to walk up this pitch, and I'm using psychology on myself. Like, you have lots of energy, you're warm, blah, blah, blah. And that works for a bit. And the whole time we only saw one person coming down, and they said, don't go up. No one's out. Go in here. And so as I'm walking up this pitch, my body starts to shut down. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm pushing myself. But then this is what happened. And this is what freaked me out, was I started to lean on rocks because I was really tired. And then I hear myself, just like this, like my own self, say to me, just relax and go to sleep. It'll be fine. And I was like, oh crap. Like, it wasn't like something else or like you should give up. It was me. And I was like, that's really messed up. And so I just kind of like perk up and I power through. And when I get to the top of this pitch, it's the Everest graveyard of all places. And I'm like, oh my God. And I basically kind of zombie mode. And so when I made it, I ended up making it, and I got helied off, and I realized all this stuff. And the doctor's like, your body was shutting down because of altitude and all this kind of stuff. You were exerting way too much energy for the conditions and all that kind of thing. And for me, I think that at that point, the experience was, I think that I was actually grateful for the choices that I'd made, and even more determined to continue to live my life in a way that I was guiding myself on my own terms. And because, when I talk to people, I was like, the difference between me and most people is like, if I go backwards in my life, I'm really proud of myself, and all these so-called choices that aren't based on practicality. I really, am proud of everything that I've done and experienced, because to me, life is about experience and about experiencing the things that light me up, the things that I'm curious about, because you're never going to know everything. You could study trees your whole life and maybe know one small percentage of trees. There's just so much knowledge and information. So just pursuing, enjoying your journey, giving yourself a worthwhile journey and pursuit. And so it really just solidified, what, kind of like pat on the back for what I've done, and say, hey, keep going. Like, this is the way to go. Because if you did eat it there, you would have been stoked on everything you've done, because you didn't compromise. And I think that the lesson is, really look at where in your life you're compromising who you really are, and what you love most. And how can you, like you said, bit by bit, start to incorporate it. If you love writing and you haven't wrote anything in 10 years, well, what if you write a little bit once a week? And we start with these baby steps, because it's not like people imagine, okay, my life is terrible, and then all of a sudden enlightenment and everything's figured out. For me, it's like, you're right, it's just that consistent choice, every single second to make the decisions and choices based on love and connection and your intuition and real truth.
Yeah, I agree with you on every single point, because it's not about enlightenment that will come to you in one sentence or two sentences. It can be, but usually it's not, because it's all about looking at your own life and picking up the raisins from it, if you see what I mean. Looking back at your, acknowledging all the choices, the right ones for you at that point and at that moment. It's when you look at your life and see the negative stuff in it and interpret it in your now moment as negative, that is when it becomes not beneficial for you. But otherwise, when you look back at your life and you say, well, that was a good choice I did. I put myself in a situation and I managed to survive this, and you look at it from that perspective, from a beneficial perspective, that is when you can use your experiences in life to enhance your now moment and become who you truly are. Because who you truly are is always of a positive nature. I'm not saying cheerful, I'm saying positive as in minus and plus. It's always on the plus side. Because everything in this reality is actually, it contains a minus and a plus. If you go down to a quantum level of reality, you will find a minus and a plus everywhere. So what makes the difference? Well, your awareness makes the difference. It's where you put your searchlight. It is where what you look at, that is what will shine for you, and that is what will become your reality, which means that it's up to you to pick out the good stuff in your life, in your past. I usually say to people that you can change your past, actually. And they say, what do you mean? Am I supposed to lie? No, you're supposed to tilt your perspective and look at the past from a different perspective. And then you can find the information embedded in that perspective that will help you become who you truly are. Because as I said, you are always all that is, and that is unconditional love. So if you can't find the love in what you did in your past, then you're looking from the wrong perspective. You need to tilt your perspective and start looking at it again. I've done this several times in my own life because I come from an environment that was not so good when I was a child. I mean, my parents came to Sweden from which was very traditional in its way of looking at women. So I was not allowed to read a lot. I was not allowed to express myself because I was a girl. I had 2 brothers and they were allowed to do that. And they are really kind people. So with them, it was cool for me. But with my parents, it was very hard because I couldn't express myself. And I loved to express myself. I've had these thoughts about reality since I can remember. One of my first things was that I looked at the stars outside and I realized it's the same stuff that goes on in my head. The universe and my mind is made of the same fabric, but I couldn't share it with anyone. So I don't even remember why I'm telling you this, but I think it's about memories, exactly. So when looking back at my own past, if I would have looked at the minuses or the negative stuff, I wouldn't be who I am today because there are so many of them. But if I tilt the perspective and I looked, how did I handle that? And I see this strong little girl handling everything, and I survived it, I thrived, and here I am. So looking at it from a better perspective, from a beneficial perspective, the way you did with your Mount Everest experience, is actually what we all need to do. We all need to go back and look at ourselves from a better perspective. And I think that, again, society is not teaching us how to do that because we are so focused on fixing problems that we forget that actually we're not here to fix problems. We're here to experience who we are and experience the beauty of being here. So it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. Everything that comes to you is actually a mirror of who you truly are, and it's up to you to see the beauty in that mirror. If you don't see it, then who will see it? It's impossible. So I do agree with you that when you look at your life and look at your experiences and say, I'm proud of it, that's actually the only way to navigate through this reality and stay sane and become who you truly are. So it's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, thank you. There's so much you said in there that I wanted to kind of touch on. The one question I had though, so we have these experiences that are negative, right? Sometimes really bad things happen to people, not so much loss, but it could be, these random events. And if you can, that are bad, like something bad could happen to you or a friend, and people are like, why do these things happen? Do you have any, thoughts on that perspective? I think it's the same thing. It just gets a little bit heavier. And I think when we use it as an opportunity to find the perspective, but some of it just feels so random. And, the only good thought that I have sometimes is, back in the day when people are dying from flu and all these random diseases and, 1800s, 1700s, whatever the case is, they would use the expression God willing. Will arrive 5 days from now, God willing, because more of these random events happen. So if you're coming from maybe not like the Western side, or somebody who had, a real big trauma, would you use the same technique to kind of try to shift their perspective and find that? Or do you offer, because I believe that, it's all love as well. And then everything is created out of the mind, but there can be actions in a 3D world that is not out of love, that you're like, oh my God, and it could happen directly to you. And then I think a lot of people have even more challenge if it happens to somebody that they know. So would you use the same perspective on that?
I wouldn't, maybe a slightly different perspective, because to me, we are all God experiencing him or herself through us. So I don't like to use the term God because it's so loaded with a lot of belief systems. So I use the term all that is instead. It suits me better. So I am all that is experiencing itself as Gordana Biernat. You are all that is experiencing itself as Matthew. So what differentiates you and me is the frequency we are emanating. And we live in a world of energy, as we said, it's motion. The physical world is energy in motion. So if everything is energy, and I have a specific frequency, then the frequency I'm tuned into is going to reflect back at me as a 3D version of my mind, which is the physical world. So in this frequency is everything I experience is embedded in that frequency. If my frequency is unconditional love, then it's a higher frequency and I take in more of reality, because the essence of all that is unconditional love. If my frequency is tuned into fear or a negative frequency, it is a smaller or a thinner frequency. It doesn't take up that much of reality as all that is or love does. So it's all about the frequency you emanate. It will always be reflected back to you in a 3D version of reality. So it comes down to who you are. And I think that the negative things happening to us, because we create our own reality all the time, then the negative stuff must be unconscious, because the positive stuff is conscious. We want it and we know that we want it. You don't want the negative stuff, but if your awareness is pointed at the negative stuff, it will come to you even though you don't want it, because the 3D version is a mirror and it doesn't tell you this is good, this is not good. It is just giving you back what you are sending out. So if your frequency is of a slightly negative frequency, then you will get the obstacles back at you. We all get obstacles because we are mixed. We are humans, and we do mix our feelings, and we do have negative thoughts occasionally, and that is what is reflected back to us as a real reality. I mean, as a 3D reality, as a real world, the way we experience it as the physical world. And I'm not saying that it is your fault if something bad happens to you. All I'm saying is that there is an unconscious awareness, unconscious searchlight on the negative thing, which you are not paying attention to, and it is happening to you. So when you say, why is this happening to me? You have unresolved, unconscious things going on, which you are not aware of, but they're still creating it. Because the thing I talk about in my book is that we are all creating this reality, and we're doing it 24/7. There is no off button. I mean, it's like saying I'm not creating my reality. It's saying like gravity doesn't work for me. It does. It works for us all. It's just being more conscious of what you're creating will eventually give you more of what you want in your reality. Being unconscious that you are the creator will give you more of things you don't want in your reality. It's complicated, and at the same time it's really very easy because it's just a mechanism. I mean, if you write something and go out on Google and search for it, you expect that what you have written there will be the answers you get back. It's the same thing. Your frequency is the search, and what you get back is Google giving you back what you put out there with your frequency. It's actually the same thing. It's very easy when you look at it that way, but it's much harder when you live it, because it feels like you're not the cause of everything happening to you outside of you. It feels like it's outside of you, and it can never be outside of you. There is no outside and inside. It's all one mind experiencing itself through us.
I love that. That was a really amazing way to end that section and question. I 100% agree, and I love the way that you phrased it, because it gives, I think that enlightenment or self-empowerment or whatever is step one, is full ownership that everything that happens to you has ever happened to you was created by you. One of them, the really challenging ones, I could say, I've heard, and it's possible that you have this soul contract when you come down to deal with these challenging experiences to help you grow or relieve karma. I'm cool with that. That makes sense to me. I'm fine with that. And then it's how you deal with that that's going to dictate your life and your growth. The other thing that I was going to add on is this unconscious creation. Most people don't create the reality consciously or realize how many random thoughts, and all of our thoughts have power. Every single one matters. So if you're going around your day and you're driving your car to work and you're thinking about all the stuff that can happen, I say imagine it's like you're grabbing putty from the universe or Play-Doh and you're shooting out, oh, I hope that I don't get fired. Oh, I hope that I don't get hit by a car. Oh, I hope that this bad thing doesn't happen. And you're grabbing putty and you're shooting it out in front of you into your 3D reality to be built. Also, what you're taking in through media, consistently ingesting all of this stuff. For everyone listening or watching, if I say don't imagine a purple cow, or try not to think about well, here, I'll do it. It's terrible, but people get it. It's the worst, but it works better this way. Okay, so everybody listening, just take a second to imagine that I have the cutest little kitten in my hands. He's just adorable. It's the sweetest little thing you have ever seen in your life. And I apologize for this. And he's so cute, and he's like crawling on me. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? You don't know me. And I grab this kitten, and I hold him. And now and I'm holding him aggressively. And people are like, oh, like, what's he doing with the cat? Now I grab a scalpel. And now you see me with the cat, and I got a scalpel, and now I stab him right in the chest. And now he's screaming. He's like, oh my God. Now I twist it, and he's like in agony. This cute little kitten is in agony. And now I just got him open, and now he's like this dead cat, and he's on the ground. He's hurting. Now, first of all, I apologize again. But for you to make sense of what I just said, you most likely, if you have empathy, felt this feeling in your gut. You felt energy in your gut when I described that, because you're like, oh, like, why would you? Oh, that's awful, terrible. Ugh. And so when we're ingesting things and people are telling us stories and we're viewing stories and we're getting other people's stories and we're experiencing life, we're not noticing that we're creating this energy in our bodies, and then we're vibrating it out. We're not consciously aware that we need to take responsibility for those things that we're ingesting. And in Buddhism, they'll call it mental nutriments. So if you listen all day, every day to somebody telling you about this terrible cat story, you're probably going to bring in a reality within your 3D frame that's going to mirror that. So if you're always watching, so go ahead.
Or you become numb to it, and that's even worse, because you become ignorant to what's happening around you. You close yourself down to this reality because you don't want to be a part of it, so you close yourself down. And I feel that the news are actually numbing us down emotionally so that we don't feel things. And we are here to feel and to taste and to smell and do. That's what we're here to do. And if you're constantly reminded of a reality that is really dangerous for you, you will not want to interact with that reality in a way that you're supposed to do when your spirit incarnated in it. So there is a big difference not reacting to something like that. And I don't have to react to it either, because it wasn't real. What you did wasn't real, and still I felt it. So it doesn't have to be real. It just has to be told, and you have to imagine it, and it's enough. That's how strong our thoughts actually are, because they do emanate an energy, and everything is energy. So it's a frequency out there, and we're creating it. And if we do it together, it's even worse, because all of us create this. It solidifies itself. Because every time you think a thought and you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, it becomes a belief. And beliefs are like bricks in the spiritual world. They create a not penetrable reality, which seems like the real world to you, but it's not. It's all energy. Everything is all energy all the time. So seeing beyond the beliefs we have created with repetitive negative thoughts is one of the things I really want people to do. And one of the things I write about in the book, that it's a belief system. It's just thoughts. It's nothing else. You can change it. You can, it's illusion, actually.
Yes, I agree with that. And I was going to add on the one comment about, news and our society. For me, education has been an issue for me, government, everything. And when I went through a depression in like 2023, because I was looking into how we still had war. And I was always reading about mind power, which led into manipulation, hypnosis, things like that. And it's really hard for people to understand, and this may or may not be true, but you could entertain the fact that if you look at all of this media and news and everything you're bombarded with, from my perspective of what I've studied and learned, it is a very sophisticated and brilliant system to make you afraid, to make you complacent, and worried about stuff that's imaginary. Watch out for your neighbor next door. You know what I mean? What the F-bomb is that? You're supposed to be bringing them cookies and having sing-alongs. That's what your neighbor's for. He's a great person. There's nothing to be afraid of. He has the same hopes, desires, fears that you do, but we have a very specific indoctrination system, and USA is the best at it. Canada is not far behind. Europe is a little bit more progressive. Sweden and the Scandinavian countries, you guys are actually doing it pretty good. So when we can, news isn't for, hey, all this terrible stuff happens all the time and you just we're going to numb you to it. So it's very important to look at what you're ingesting, because if it's going in and you're getting the story, it's going in frequency based. And to give people and then the beliefs are formed and all that stuff. And so if you can imagine, what your life would be like, rather than the cat story, what would your life look like if you were infinite, if you could create anything, if life were magic, if you could tune into that same frequency, and if you can tune into the frequency of what your infinite life is and continue to connect with it over and over and over again. And I just say either meditation or visualization. I truly believe whatever you visualize and live into an hour a day will come to fruition, whether it's abundance. But the problem is people don't know deeply what it is that they want, what it is, their higher purpose, what it is like that really lights them up. They'll think about cars or something like that, if you're mostly guys. But when you really tune into what matters most, which is friends, being of contribution, having unique skills, utilized growth, being around amazing people, nature, those are all the fundamentals. So really tuning into, like, if all of this fell apart, and you had all the resources you could ever have, how would you live your life? And if you can connect to that frequency, into those belief systems, into that reality, just in the same way as you felt terrible about the cat, you can shoot out that positive frequency and magnify that back. And this kind of leads into the question where I was going through the excerpt of your book, and I really loved all the titles and captions. One of them was how to tap into your abundant resources. And so if we start to entertain this thought that we do create our reality, and we must take responsibility for everything, and we are in alignment with source and all that kind of stuff, how can we tap in more to creating the reality we want to bring us the abundance, to live in peace and really connect to that future rather than the one that seems to be perpetuated of fear and destruction and all the other stuff that they're selling?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is turn off your TV. That is one of the first things. Just turn off your TV and beware of what you're taking in. Because, I mean, have you ever wondered why we think that films that are based on a negative feeling are more realistic than films that are happy and joyful and based on growth. We feel that these films are not that interesting because they're some kind of a dream world, while a negatively charged film is more realistic because that's how our society is constructed, to seem like a dangerous place to live in. And I don't understand why this is so, but I feel it. And when you have a child, you feel it really, really hard, because you see how the child changes from seeking the joy, from trying to find joy, from being curious, like a scientist being curious of the reality, and becoming more and more shutting down all these curious things going on, and becoming more and more compliant. Otherwise, you're being turning off the negative stuff in your life, meaning TV and newspapers. Just turn it off, look outside and see what's happening. I promise you, you will not see the terror outside of your window. And that is not a naive way of looking at reality. It's actually a sound way of looking at reality. Talk to your neighbors, talk to people you meet on the street, feel their energy, and be more in tune with what is actually around you in your now moment, not what is shown to you from a screen. Because our thoughts, they work like an internal vision board. And if you had a vision board outside of your head and somebody walked by and put a poster on about the cat, for instance, a bloody cat on it, you would say, what is this? I don't want this on my vision board, and you will take it off. But we're not doing the same thing in our minds, even though our minds actually are our vision boards. I'm sorry, but I have to put my iPad on charge. There we go. So treating your mind as your vision board and being careful of what you put up in that vision board. For instance, when you're standing in the shower, don't think about the problems of the day. Start thinking about the intention and what you want to experience in this day, because this day is not coming back. This is the one single day. Why? Let's see now. This day is not coming back. This is the day you have to live today, and fill it with the feelings you actually want to experience, because you are here to experience feelings of being you here. So choose what you want to feel. Say to yourself, today I want to be at peace with everything around me, and then focus on being that in every single moment of your day. That is one way to start that reaction of becoming more aware of who you are. And start focusing on your dreams and desires. That is one of the most important things. If you don't know what your dreams and desires are, then ask yourself, if money was not an issue, would I be living here? Would I be doing this? Would I be wearing this? Would I be eating this? Because what you eat is also important. Everything is actually important, and it's a reflection of who you are. Everything you do in your life, everything you wear, everything you say is a reflection of who you are. And it might sound scary, but it's not, because it is there. You can't change it. You might as well enjoy it and learn something from it, because that's what we are here to do. We are here to learn, to understand who we are, to grow in that being, me or you or whoever it is, and to honor all the things that is actually you. So it's an ongoing process. There are no check things. You have to do it all the time. You have to remind yourself, the same way as your higher self on Mount Everest. You have to remind yourself all the time, what am I doing here? Who am I? And is this a true expression of who I am around me? That's all. It's easy, but you have to do it continuously. You can't stop.
Yes, that was amazing. And I love the point of just, it's all these little incremental decisions, these incremental intentions, one of the keys is, stop focusing on what you don't want. And that's just contrast. So you know what you do want, and setting the intention, because it is each and every moment. If you give yourself a 3-year window, a 1-year window, or a 6-month window, if you're very out of shape and you give yourself 6 months to eat right and achieve something, you're making great progress at that 6 months. And so it'll be all those incremental decisions that will get you there. Go ahead.
Can you imagine a society where everyone thinks about what they are saying, eating, doing, when they think about, is this good for me? Is this good for my child? Is this good for my neighbor? Start to think about, let's talk about the food. I mean, if you start to think about what you eat, then you will intuitively know which food is not good for you and which food is good for you. And the food that is not good for you wouldn't be able to thrive. I mean, people selling it wouldn't be able to thrive because nobody would buy these things. But you have to become aware of who you are and what you need in your reality, and that you are here to explore the best things, not the worst things.
Absolutely.
So eating food that is nutritious for you is a very easy thing. You turn the package upside down and you read what's in this package. If it's more than 3 things, don't buy it. Put it back. And they have to send it back. And the problems we have solve themselves organically if we start thinking, each and every one of us. You don't even need to do it in groups. You just need to become focused on who you are and what you want in this reality.
Yes.
Become more conscious.
I agree with all that. I think that with the change in the world, a lot of people, when they're wanting to make change or transform, they'll say, oh, but the society is like this, or the group is like this, or this is the way it is. Whenever you say they or we or something outside of you, say I. I am like this. And if you just be the thing that you want to be, you're now setting the example, because all of that holds no weight. What you're doing is you're, imagining the way you think it should be, and you have an expectation and you want to play a certain game. Well, you've got to play your own game. You've got to make your own choices. And I interviewed my friend Adam Hart, who wrote a book called The Power of Food. And one of the things he said in the podcast, which I really loved, was that whenever you're taking, eating something, saying like, is this a loving choice? Like, is this a choice made of love? And food is really powerful, and it can be a really amazing way to, show love for yourself, like self-love. Like, am I eating this? And it's going to, if you had something important to do and you ate 10 McDonald's cheeseburgers, how do you feel? Feel great.
It's all about honoring your body, honoring your spirit, honoring who you are. And there's nothing wrong in honoring. It's not selfish, because if you don't do that, then nobody else will. And if everyone honors who they are, then actually we elevate our consciousness. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about elevating consciousness in the world. And I truly believe that it starts from within each and every one of us. It cannot start anywhere else, because we are creating this world from within, which means that any change you want to see outside of yourself has to start from within. So you have to be the change before you can see it. That's the only way to do it. We can try to change it on the outside, and then it's like forcing yourself upon yourself when you try to change something outside of you. You can only change it from within. And understanding this, it makes perfect sense then that everything starts in a mind. Everything starts in your mind, because everything is your mind, a reflection of your mind. It's a paradox, but that's the only way I can understand this reality. The only logical way for me to understand this reality, actually.
And when you start making those choices, there's a little bit of lag time. Remember, there's a tiny bit of lag time. So if we just had everything that we wanted at a snap of a finger, we wouldn't learn, and we wouldn't be able to embody those choices. So when we give ourselves a little bit of lag time, we realize, we are creating this. We are deliberate creators. And now we can go ahead and make all these different choices, and we're seeing the results. And that's how we change the world. And if you're doing it, number one, the most important thing is you change your reality. And then if you want to make a difference in the world, that's the best thing you can do, because now people see you changing your reality, and now they're witnessing it, and they now realize it's possible for them. And I think it's the most powerful thing that you can do. And I love how you just keep going back to these little intentions. It's every little step of reflection and asking, and reflection and asking.
Yes, it's always about the courage to do things, because a lot of people are thinking the same way. I have a lot of people telling me that, oh, I understand what you're saying. I haven't been able to put my words on it the way you do. So in posting my posts and the book I'm writing is all about putting words into feelings that a lot of people are having but don't know how to express, because we live in a time where we actually are opening up, where actually our consciousness is raised naturally. So to understand this reality in a way that maybe me and you do understand it is not a hard thing to do. It's actually just a question of opening up to a bigger picture of this, and to be curious, and not to shut down and say this isn't possible because science hasn't reached there yet. I feel that science actually has reached. It's only that we don't understand it yet in our societies. I mean, if you look at quantum physics, it actually tells us that everything is a paradox, and that synchronicity is actually the way we interact in this reality. So miracles are actually everyday things going on, but we're taught to see it in a different way. And I think that maybe in 10, 20 years from now, people will see it in a more clear way. And what we're doing here, we're trailblazing at the moment, I think, on unknown territory.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you were talking before about, shutting off the news, so to me in Buddhism, they call mental nutriments what you're taking in continuously. And when you go outside, it's not being naive, because how does that, all of that exists somewhere in some reality. All of the good and bad exists simultaneously at every moment. So are you just going to stare at the death and the war and the thing? Like you understand, okay, cool, maybe this is happening there, but is it outside in Sweden or in Canada at this very moment? And am I going to allow that image to dictate what I do now, to say hi to my neighbor, to be afraid of him because of something? That's the goal. That's what they want. That's nonsense. And when you go outside and just stare at a tree and meditate at a tree and be in nature, you're going to have such a connection. And like, that's what reality is. That's real. It's not this image on a box or what you see. That's separation. Even seeing this, right? So if you're listening or watching this podcast, go outside and hug a tree for 10 minutes. That's more real than this. And I was reading or listening to the Essene Gospel of Peace, and it talks about 3 ways to achieve this higher level of consciousness, or this awakening, or this enlightenment. And one of them was through nature. Just go outside and sit by a river every single day and just connect with nature. Nature will show you what the truth is of God, of reality, of nature, of infinity. The second way is through consciousness. It's through observing your thoughts and mind, and continually reflecting in and going back and kind of nitpicking and watching your mind do its thing, and connecting to silence and having all these downloads and things come in. And then the third is wisdom teachers, to people who put in the work to show the way of what they've learned. And so you can look at this information and embody, these timeless lessons. And I think that, what you're talking about here is all these, almost all 3 of them mixed in, and just say, hey, these are ways here. And some of these things are more true than others. As in, if you look at a tree and sit outside, that's more true than looking at the TV. Setting the intention and moving forward is how you can deliberately create your reality, because that's just the way it is. That's also the truth. And being here and setting these intentions, and realizing it's not just one, thing that happens and the light bulb's all on and it's all solved. It's continuous growth and continuous intention. And so I just wanted to add that.
It's always, the only thing that is constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well go with your flow and enjoy the change in that, and observe yourself in that change. How am I reacting to this change? Which will give you constant information of who you are at that moment. I think that we need to become more lucid in who we are, because if you think that you are that you're constant, then your essence is constant, your life force is constant, but who you are is actually changeable all the time. When I think about who I was 10 or 15 years ago, I see the difference. It's the same I looking out, but what I'm experiencing is different. So in this physical reality, I am in constant change, and I need to embrace that. The minute I get afraid of changing, that's when I experience inertia in this reality. So the change is actually the joy of being here and exploring. It's a play, it's a dance. It's Alan Watts calls life a dance. It's not going from point A to point B. It's a dance. It's about the dance. It's about doing it until we enter a new reality when we die. So it's all about dancing to your own music and enjoying it, to put it in a more
Yes.
poetic way.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny because I actually
Mm.
just posted that maybe a week ago, because I love his stuff, and South Park did little animations on some of his work. And he's just saying, yeah, you think you get to this thing, and that's how society is built up. Grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get a job, and you graduate, and then you get to the place, and you realize you're supposed to dance. And that's why
Yes.
with people that I work with and coach, and same with athletes, you could have everything you want in the world and not happiness and not fulfillment. Martial arts and real, that's what it is, development of mind, body, and spirit. And that's what a whole athlete is, or a whole person is. They're balanced. Masculine, feminine, mental and physical, spiritual, and it's their intention. And what really gives people fulfillment is a worthwhile journey, a worthwhile goal that they've put on themselves, and then non-attachment, because they know that it's going to only grow. You cannot not grow. Like, there is no end to martial arts. You can't just master it. There's no end to snowboarding or skateboarding. You can go forever. There's no mastery. It's the same in life. There's no end goal. So if you're here on this planet and you're supposed to dance your way along and enjoy and experience and express yourself, what is this vision or direction that you'd like to go in, that you'd like to dance along? Because that's when you're on track, is you're building. You're like, yes, I'm building this. And if you eat it, you die in a month or 6 months or a year. You're like, I was really stoked that I was building that. That was the thing that I wanted. And that's when you can be at peace through all the stressful crap that comes along with being a human, because it's probably not going to be just all perfect and magical and you're doing it on a cloud like a Buddha. It's going to be frustrating, and you're going to deal with all kinds of stuff, and you're going to be like, I'm at peace here with this human, and I'm going to show him love and compassion because I know where I'm going.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing. Alan Watts says this, that you don't work a piano, you play a piano. It's the same thing with life. I mean, you don't work your life, you play through your life. And it's supposed to be a play. If you feel that you're just working, then there is something you need to change. You need to do something to change it, and it always comes from within. You have to become more playful, become more like a child, become more open to the experiences and the changes that are happening around you without being afraid of it. It's the fear that messes things up for us, always. It's always the fear doing it. Down the vision more narrow, because it's about a lower frequency. Fear is always a lower frequency, which means it cannot take in all the frequencies. For instance, if you talk to a person that is enlightened, that person will be unconditionally loving. For instance, you talk to Buddha or someone, a guru that is really enlightened. They will always say, well, it's your choice, and I accept that, because their frequency is so high that they can see your entire frequency. If you talk to a person that has a more narrow frequency, that is more afraid or talks more from the ego, they will only be able to see the part of your frequency that mirrors their frequency. Everything else outside of that frequency will be invisible to them. So they will only see one small fraction of you. They cannot see the entire you as a person who is more enlightened and was more compassionate. That's the difference between ego and compassion, between fear and love. One is all encompassing, the other one is separating and segregating. So every time you segregate, separate, or stop, you're talking from ego and fear. That's one GPS thing you can use when you feel that, okay, it's my ego talking, I need to do something else. I need to change my perspective, start looking at it from a different perspective. It's all about in the now and the play in the now.
Yes, I totally agree, and I love that. And it is very simple. You don't see people who are loving and kind and develop going around being a-holes in public, you know. And that's where the mastery is, not only showing love and compassion for those who are in your reality that are showing you love, but showing them for the people who they are love, and you know that they are every bit as human and awake and loving and compassionate and powerful and infinite and all this amazing stuff. But their mind, for whatever reason, for wherever they are going through this experience in a lower density or vibration or whatever you want to call it, and by you holding space, you know, and showing them love and compassion, now you're setting the example for them, and you know that's going to be their biggest, you know, healing. You know, that's going to be their biggest teacher.
Yeah, you were saying just a few minutes ago about the positive and the negative, that we are somehow in the middle of it, balancing it. A person that is balanced is not a person that doesn't see the negative things, because we all do see them. It's impossible not to see them, because we live in a dualistic reality. We live in a reality which is based on polarities, which means that you can acknowledge what is not right, but you don't need to react to it. And that's the difference. That is actually what balance means, that you can see it, but you choose not to react to it. That is why we have free will, because you're here to choose. That is the difference between you and a flower. A flower doesn't choose it that way. It's not a conscious choice, or maybe it is, I don't know, actually, but I think it's more conscious in human beings, because you are here to make that choice. The reality, the mirror, it contains everything. It contains the pluses and the minuses. It's up to you. If you want to focus on the minus, then you will not be balanced. There will be something not balanced in you. If you see both sides and you make a choice, that's when you're balanced. So it's not naive to see the positive things. I see there is a problem, but I want to focus more positive, or to look at the positive sides. So it's not about putting blindfolds on you. It's more about understanding that being, you have a choice in every single moment. There is always a choice, always. That's what we are here to explore, the choices. Otherwise, it would be bliss all the time, and that would be boring, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're bang on with all of that. And that's that's totally our free will is the thing that we get to choose in infinite possibility. And our free will and our choice and our intention and our actions are our energy moving forward and saying, this is the choice that I make. I understand that it exists, and that's a choice to go into the negativity, into the whatever the case is. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying it does, and I choose this through my own free will. And that can be your choice, and that's cool. And it can be very real for you, but this is going to be real for me through my own intention and free will. And you know, you just dropped so much wisdom this whole entire time. It's been such a real pleasure talking to you. I think I'm going to have to get you back on to talk about anything else again for as long as I can. Before I wrap up, I just wanted to see if there's anything that you wanted to talk about, and maybe, I know you love reading, to share maybe your top 3 books, or maybe top 20 if you just have too many, or just something that you've enjoyed recently. Or
If I should share top 20, I would say read all the New Thought movement books from the beginning of the 20th century, because anything you find from it will enlighten you. These people really knew what they were talking about. It's awesome to read the New Thought movement from the beginning of the 20s. But if I should pinpoint one book that really matters and made a change in my way of thinking, that would be Itzhak Bentov's Stalking the Wild Pendulum. It was written in the 70s, and it's a very short, small book, but it's profound. He talks about the creation of reality and how we are all one, and it's awesome. So if you have the time, it takes maybe an hour and a half to read, and it's mind-blowing. So read that. That is one of the books I would share with you.
Awesome. Thank you. And so do you have any final closing thoughts? Also, make sure you tell people where they can find you. But do you have anything that you wanted to add or talk about before we say goodbye?
Well, people can find me on Twitter, which is @mypowertalk. That's my ID. Or they can go to my site, which is mypowertalk.com, where I put up blogs and thoughts and inspiration now and then. And yeah, well, that would be where they can find me. And honestly, what I want to share is really, truly start thinking about who you are, because otherwise everything in your life is unconscious. You're here to become more conscious of who you are. So start exploring your desires, start exploring your dreams, start putting things up on your vision board that you want, not what you don't want. And everything will be just fine when you do that. So that's what I wanted to share with the listeners and the viewers today.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for you. Thank you for all of your work, for making all the choices and setting your intention to spread love and honesty and wisdom. And just, it takes a lot of work to get to where you are. So, I recognize you and I thank you and I appreciate you for continuing to make that choice each and every day and to inspire others to, come along with that example, because if you can do it for long enough, you're going to start to be the example and be in more peace. And that's what we want. We want as many people on the team as we can. And so thank you for everything that you've done and what you're going to do and for sharing your wisdom today. So I think that wraps it up. And thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you so much.
See you.